Something just broke in the Nancy Guthrie case. And the person who broke it is not a blogger, not a podcaster, not someone chasing clicks. She is a retired agent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and what she posted on March 10th did not just ripple through the true crime community. It detonated. Welcome back to Cold Case History. I am going to walk you through every detail of this case, the footage, the forensics, the suspect behavior, the DNA, and the digital evidence trail. If you are new here, subscribe now and hit the notification bell. We cover every update on cases like this one the moment they break. And trust me, this one is not finished breaking yet. Let's begin at the beginning. Her name is Jennifer Coffendaffer. She spent years working inside the Federal Bureau of Investigation. She understands how these investigations breathe, how they move, how they go quiet right before something enormous happens. She understands the language of law enforcement silence better than almost anyone outside of an active federal building. And on March 10th, she did not post a theory. She posted a question that carried an answer inside it like a loaded weapon. She asked publicly why Sheriff Nanos keeps turning away proven, highly capable civilian search organizations like ECU and the United Cajun Navy. And then she offered her own interpretation. Is it because law enforcement is close to an arrest? Is it because they already know what happened to Nancy? And then she closed it with 4 words that have been burning across every true crime platform since the moment they went live. Half glass full. Hoping Ellie is getting closer. Read that again. A former FBI special agent, someone who has built cases from the inside out, who has watched investigations collapse and watched investigations close, is looking at the external behavior of law enforcement in Pima County and reading something in it. She is not guessing. She is translating. And tonight we are going to go through every piece of evidence, every investigative signal, every expert statement, every forensic thread that tells us this case is not slowing down. It is accelerating. Before we go any further, it is worth being very precise about who Jennifer Coffendaffer is and why her voice carries the weight that it does in this case. She is not a media personality. She is not an academic criminologist who has spent her career in lecture halls instead of field investigations. She is a retired bureau agent. She has worked from inside the same institutional machinery that is now running the Nancy Guthrie investigation. She has been tracking this case from its earliest days, posting publicly on X, speaking to Newsweek, appearing across national media, and what distinguishes her from almost every other voice in this conversation is her consistency and her precision. When something concerned her, she said so directly. When the unidentified vehicle captured on a Ring camera near the abduction window had not been traced, she said that was concerning. When Sheriff Nanos confirmed DNA complications, she addressed it head-on. She does not soften things to make people feel better, and she does not hype things to drive engagement. She reads what is in front of her. And right now, what is in front of her is a sheriff who is turning away serious, professional civilian search organizations. And she cannot let that go unremarked. So let us understand exactly what happened with those organizations because this is the moment that triggered her March 10th post, and it needs to be laid out completely. The United Cajun Navy is not a group of well-meaning amateurs showing up with flashlights and enthusiasm. It is a structured, documented, nonprofit search organization with a proven record across major operations in this country. Their vice president, Brian Thrasher, went on national television to lay out exactly what they brought to Sheriff Nanos. This was not a casual offer. It was a 41-page operational plan. Detailed, specific, actionable. It included thermal drone capability, the kind of equipment that can detect heat signatures in open desert at night. It included 25 trained search canines. It included coordinated grid sweeps of desert terrain conducted by experienced personnel who have operated in exactly this kind of environment before. They did not call the sheriff and say they wanted to help. They submitted a formal, professional proposal. Sheriff Chris Nanos has not responded. No yes. No no. No acknowledgement. Nothing. And when reporters pressed his office for a statement, what came back was this. We appreciate their concern and we all want to find Nancy, but this work is best left to professionals. Best left to professionals. That sentence has exactly 2 possible readings. The first is bureaucratic protectionism. A law enforcement official guarding his case from outside interference, which happens. The second reading is the one Jennifer Coffendaffer arrived at on March 10th. That law enforcement is not turning away help because they don't want it. They are turning it away because they no longer need it in the way those organizations can provide it. Because the investigation may have already moved past the phase where ground-level thermal drone sweeps and desert canvases are the priority. Because the focus may have shifted from finding to identifying, from searching terrain to closing in on a person. Now let us build the full evidentiary picture, because the civilian search refusal is not the only signal pointing in this direction. It is just the most recent one. And when you stack everything else beneath it, the pattern becomes impossible to dismiss. The first signal is something Sheriff Nanos said himself in a nationally televised interview. On the Today Show, Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos told NBC News that investigators are definitely closer to tracking down the suspects captured in the surveillance footage. Not possibly closer. Not making progress. Definitely closer. A former FBI intelligence analyst named Jennifer Coffendaffer, who spent 13 years inside the Bureau working intelligence collection and analysis, told Newsweek that language was atypical and potentially counterproductive if it caused public urgency to ease. That is a legitimate concern. But there is another way to read it. A separate former FBI official told Newsweek that when investigators use that specific combination of language, saying they are closer and referencing hot leads, it usually signals something very specific. It means the investigation has moved past the stage of processing incoming tips and has entered the stage of narrowing and verifying through digital tracing, forensic analysis, and confirmed data streams. Moved past sorting. Now narrowing. That is a funnel closing, not a case stalling. The second signal is the task force structure, and this one has been misread almost everywhere it has been reported. In the earliest weeks of the investigation, the FBI's presence in Tucson was enormous. Hundreds of agents. A 24-hour command post running continuously. That large visible footprint has contracted. The command post moved from Tucson to Phoenix. And almost every outlet framed that contraction as retreat, as a sign the investigation was cooling. That reading is wrong. Here is what actually happened. For Pima County Sheriff's Department detectives and a sergeant were formally assigned to an FBI task force and placed full-time at the FBI's Tucson field office to work exclusively on the Nancy Guthrie case. For detectives, one sergeant, full-time, dedicated. That is not the architecture of a case winding down. That is the architecture of a case that has burned off the noise and locked onto the signal. It went from a massive general operation to a precisely structured dedicated unit working specific actionable leads. Coffendaffer described it herself. A red-hot case with agents, analysts, and Pima County Sheriff's officers working all the actionable leads. Red-hot. Not cold. Not cooling. The third signal is something that slipped past most of the coverage. Annie Guthrie's vehicle, the car belonging to Savannah's sister, was taken into law enforcement custody in the early stages of this investigation. It has since been returned to the family. In investigative terms, that release is a statement. It means either the vehicle produced no useful evidence and is no longer relevant to the case, or, and this is the more significant interpretation, investigators have already extracted everything of value from it. The forensic analysis is complete. Whatever the vehicle contributed to the overall picture has been absorbed into the larger evidentiary framework. They got what they needed from it. It goes back. The fourth signal comes from retired FBI Special Agent Jason Pack, who was central to the early weeks of this investigation and who personally described the recovery of the Nest camera footage as finding a needle in a haystack. Pack made a statement about the FBI's decision to return to Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood for a second round of door-to-door canvassing. He called it a good sign. And then he explained exactly why with a level of precision that makes the implication impossible to miss. He said that when agents first canvass a neighborhood in the initial 48 hours, they are working from a rough timeline. But timelines sharpen. Cell phone records come back. Walmart purchase data gets analyzed. The suspect's clothing gets traced through retail supply chains. The timeline tightens. And suddenly a neighbor's answer that seemed completely insignificant 3 weeks ago becomes critical. A neighbor's answer that seemed irrelevant 3 weeks ago becomes critical. That is a specific thing Pack is describing. It is the investigative process of retroactive significance. Evidence does not always yield its value at the moment it is collected. Forensic results take time. Subpoenas take time. Data takes time to process and cross-reference. But as each confirmed layer arrives, as the timeline sharpens, connections form between details that previously seemed unrelated. The FBI going back to that neighborhood is not a sign that they are lost. It is a sign that they now know precisely what they are looking for in those cameras and in those neighbors' memories. They are returning with a sharper lens. The fifth signal is something Coffendaffer said about the suspect himself, and it needs to be heard very carefully. She has studied the doorbell camera footage in detail. Her professional background gives her a specific ability to assess what law enforcement can and cannot extract from that kind of video evidence. And what she said about this masked suspect was direct. She said he is very identifiable. The eyebrows, the mustache, the way he carries himself, the pinky ring. And she said the number one lead in this case is someone who knows him coming forward. Let us take each of those elements individually. The eyebrows are visible in the footage even through the ski mask. Their shape, their heaviness, their specific arch, visible above the mask line. The mustache was confirmed by the FBI as black, visible beneath the lower edge of the mask. It is a specific physical feature that meaningfully narrows the universe of possible suspects. The way he carries himself, not just the clothing and the pack, but the manner of movement, the fit, the holster position on his weapon, all of it speaks to training and personal habit. And then the pinky ring. A ring visible through thick protective gloves in one of the photographs the FBI released. Sheriff Nanos confirmed it himself. He said people have circled it and said it's a ring, and he said he sees it too. A ring on the pinky finger. That is not a general physical characteristic. That is a specific, personal, chosen accessory. Something that the people in this man's life would recognize without hesitation. Coffendaffer's conclusion from all of this is precise. This suspect, despite planning his concealment carefully, left enough identifying information in that footage that someone who knows him can look at those images and know exactly who is standing on Nancy Guthrie's porch. If you're still here, subscribe, because cases like this only work when people stay. And tell us where you're watching from. I love seeing my global family represent. Drop your country or city in the comments. The sixth signal is about money and pressure and human psychology under sustained heat. Retired FBI agent Maureen O'Connell described the psychological environment created by the reward with a metaphor that has stayed with this case. She said that if more than one person is involved in this, and she believes there is, they are now in an air fryer. And it is just a question of who jumps out first. An air fryer. $1.2 million sitting on the table. $1 million from the Guthrie family. $100,000 from the FBI. An additional $100,000 donated anonymously. Plus the $88 crime reward. Coffendaffer has been explicit about how she believes this case will ultimately break. She told Newsweek that in her opinion, the number one way this case gets solved is someone who knows the suspect coming forward. A girlfriend who gets angry. A family member who finds a moral compass. Or who looks at $1.2 million and decides that loyalty has a price ceiling. That is not wishful thinking. That is a historically documented pattern. Sophisticated planned kidnappings involving operational coordination and multiple participants rarely stay sealed indefinitely. They require planning, preparation, communication, and other people. A driver, a lookout, someone who provided inside information, someone who helped afterward. Any one of those people is a potential cooperating witness. And at $1.2 million, the incentive to be that person is extraordinary. Former FBI agent Andrew Bringwell confirmed this from a prosecutorial angle. He told Newsweek these cases break when someone makes a mistake. Often all it takes is one conspirator deciding they want out. 6 weeks of FBI intensity and $1.2 million is a pressure environment designed to produce exactly that decision. The seventh signal is the Walmart backpack trail. Sheriff Nanos described the Ozark Trail Hiker pack, the specific 25-liter backpack worn by the suspect, as one of the most promising leads in the case. Here is what that lead actually produced. Investigators obtained from Walmart the complete purchase records for every Ozark Trail Hiker pack sold across multiple months. Every transaction, every store, every date, every payment method. If that backpack was purchased with a credit or debit card at any Walmart location anywhere in the country, that transaction lives in a database. The buyer's name is attached to it. Beyond purchase records, law enforcement has been working through surveillance footage from Walmart store cameras across the region. Every register. Every store where the pack was sold. That is an enormous data operation, but it is an operation with a finite number of outcomes. The backpack was either purchased with a traceable payment method, which leads directly to a name, or it was purchased with cash or through an anonymous platform like eBay. Nanos confirmed the eBay possibility exists, but he also confirmed something else, something that deserves to be read slowly. He said there is still information authorities have not shared with the public, information they are holding back. That is not a deflection. That is a deliberate signal from the lead investigative official on this case that the public picture of this investigation is incomplete, and what is being withheld is precisely what matters most. The eighth signal is the full convergence of digital forensic streams. Pack described it in terms that explain why investigators are projecting confidence despite the absence of a public arrest. Cell phone records coming back. Walmart data being analyzed. Suspect clothing being traced through retail channels. 3 parallel investigative streams running simultaneously toward the same center point. Cell phone records do not lie. Every device that was active in the Catalina Foothills neighborhood on the night of January 31st and into February 1st generated data. Tower pings. Connection records. Geolocation logs stored by carriers across the country. The FBI has subpoenaed those records. A team of digital forensic analysts is cross-referencing every device that appeared in that neighborhood against every device that appeared there in the weeks prior to the abduction. This includes the period around January 11th, when a neighbor named Aldine Meister observed a suspicious man conducting what appeared to be surveillance near Nancy's home. Any device that appeared on January 11th and reappeared on February 1st is flagged. Any device that was new to that area, never seen before, is a primary target. That analysis does not take years. It takes time, and it is running right now. When you stack all of it together, the picture that Coffendaffer, Pack, O'Connell, Bringwell, and every other credentialed investigative voice in this case has assembled points in one direction. Not certainty, not a guaranteed outcome, but a case that is moving, narrowing, and closing. A dedicated task force that has shed the noise and locked onto specific leads. A digital forensic pipeline running on multiple parallel tracks. A psychological pressure chamber built out of $1.2 million and 6 weeks of unrelenting FBI focus that is squeezing everyone with knowledge of this crime. A sheriff who is turning away civilian search teams. And a former FBI agent who spent her career building exactly these kinds of cases, watching from the outside and saying half glass full, hoping Ellie is getting closer. That is not the language of someone watching a case go cold. That is the language of someone who recognizes the specific shape an investigation takes when it is in its final approach. And there is one more thing. The case that Coffendaffer herself has cited repeatedly as the template. The case that broke along almost exactly this pattern. Bryan Kohberger. For students murdered at the University of Idaho. A suspect who planned carefully, covered his tracks, and moved through the weeks after the murders with the confidence of someone who believed he had not been seen. Then the DNA results came back. The cell tower data converged. And one morning in January of 2023, roughly 5 weeks after the murders, law enforcement went to his parents' home in Pennsylvania, went through the trash, and found a single Q-tip. Bryan Kohberger's confident invisibility was over in a moment. We are now 6 weeks into the Nancy Guthrie investigation. DNA is being processed. Cell phone records are being analyzed. Walmart purchase data is in hand. Retail tracing is running. And a retired FBI special agent is publicly reading the behavior of law enforcement and saying it looks like the behavior of people who are approaching the end of a case. The Kohberger case closed in the 5th week. We are in the 6th. If you know who the masked man on Nancy Guthrie's porch is, you call 1-800-CALL-FBI right now. If you have ever seen those eyebrows, that mustache, that pinky ring, that specific way of moving and carrying himself on anyone in your life, that recognition is worth $1.2 million. Anonymous, confidential, immediate. And if this case matters to you, if you believe that Nancy Guthrie deserves justice and that her family deserves answers, then do one thing right now before you close this video. Subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell, and turn on all notifications. Because this case is not finished. The next development could come tonight, tomorrow, or this week. And when it does, we will be here covering every detail the moment it breaks. You need to be in this community when that happens. Subscribe now. Drop a comment telling us where in the world you are watching from. Share this video with one person who follows this case. Every view, every share, every new subscriber is another set of eyes on this story. And right now, this story needs all the eyes it can get. We will see you in the next update.